The Cosmic Innovation Archive lists human open source projects as community achievements. Part 1. Archivist Han had reviewed innovation submissions for the past 43 cycles, and in all that time, nothing had prepared them for the human filing. They took pride in their work. Every species in the known galaxy trusted the Cosmic Innovation Archive to properly record who created what, who owned which patents, and which corporations or individuals deserved credit for technological breakthroughs. It was a sacred duty that spanned 15,000 worlds. The human submission arrived on a standard data crystal glowing soft blue in Han's manipulator claw. They inserted it into the archive terminal and waited for the files to load. The screen flickered to life, displaying page after page of innovations. Han's 3 eyes widened with each scroll: advanced medical algorithms, quantum encryption protocols, fusion reactor designs, universal translation software, water purification systems. The list went on for hundreds of entries. "Impressive," Han muttered, their translator chip rendering the words in standard galactic. The humans had only joined the galactic community 30 cycles ago, yet they were submitting more innovations than species who had been members for. But then Han noticed something wrong. Every entry in the archive required proper attribution. Who invented it? Which company owned it? What individual genius deserved credit? These were fundamental questions. Innovation belonged to someone. That was how civilization worked. You created something valuable, you owned it, you profited from it. That profit funded more innovation. The cycle continued. Han pulled up the first human entry, a revolutionary medical diagnostic artificial intelligence that could detect over 10,000 diseases with 99% accuracy. The system had already saved millions of lives across multiple worlds. Surely such an achievement belonged to some brilliant human doctor or a wealthy medical corporation. The attribution field read, "The Open Medicine Initiative Community." Han blinked. Community? That made no sense. They checked the patent holder field. It read, "Released under GPL 30 license, free for all sapient species." Free? The archivist's translator must be malfunctioning. Nobody gave away medical technology for free. Nobody. They sold advanced medical treatments at prices that bankrupted entire families. The academic guilds charged membership fees for access to research papers. The very concept of free, unrestricted medical innovation violated every economic principle Han had ever learned. They moved to the next entry, encryption software that even the archive's own security systems now used. Attribution, the Cipher Collective, patent holder, MIT license, open source. The next entry, advanced farming algorithms that had ended hunger on 7 worlds. Attribution, Apache agricultural project. Status, free for any use, modification, and distribution. Han's breathing spiracles fluttered rapidly, a sign of deep confusion among them. They scrolled faster now, checking entry after entry. Operating systems, communication protocols, educational software, environmental monitoring tools, manufacturing designs. Every single entry listed a collective, a foundation, a community, or a project. None listed a corporation. None listed a price. Everything was labeled free, open, or public domain. This had to be an error, a massive data corruption. Perhaps human computers stored information differently, and the translation had scrambled the attribution fields. That had to be it. Han flagged the entire submission with a red priority marker and sent a message to the Archive Council. Within hours, representatives from 200 species gathered in the virtual council chamber. The holographic faces of dozens of different aliens filled Han's screen, all looking equally confused. "This is clearly corrupted data," announced Ambassador K of the Raptor clans, their feathered crest raised in irritation. "No species shares valuable technology freely. Humans must be using some translation protocol that our systems cannot parse correctly." "I agree," added Merchant Lord of the Praxis Trade Collective. Perhaps humans have a different way of denoting corporate ownership. We should request clarification before rejecting their submission. Han nodded. I have already contacted their liaison. Dr. Sarah has agreed to address the council directly. The holographic display shifted, and a human woman appeared. She had dark hair pulled back from her face and wore simple clothing. She smiled at the assembled representatives, seemingly unaware of the confusion she was about to address. Hello, council members, Doctor said. I'm honored to present Earth's submission to the archive. I understand there are some questions about our attribution methods. Dr. Han began carefully. We have reviewed your submission. The innovations listed are truly remarkable. However, there appears to be an issue with the attribution and ownership fields. Every entry lists a collective or community rather than an individual or corporation. We believe this may be a translation or technical error. Doctor's smile widened. Oh, there's no error. Those attributions are correct. We call it open source. Silence filled the virtual chamber. 200 species stared at the human. I do not understand, Han said finally. You are saying that these technologies, some of which are worth trillions of galactic credits, were created by groups of individuals working together. Exactly, Doctor replied. Let me give you an example. Take the Linux operating system. It was started by a university student named back in 1991. He wrote the basic kernel and then released it publicly, allowing anyone to see the code, modify it, and improve it. Thousands of programmers from all over Earth contributed to it. They worked on it in their spare time. They fixed bugs, added features, and made it better. Nobody owned it. Nobody profited from it directly. They just wanted to build something great together. But why? The question came from a representative, their mechanical voice sharp with suspicion. What did they gain? Control, data, secret access. They gained a better operating system, Doctor said simply. When one person solves a problem, 8 billion people benefit. When those 8 billion people can look at that solution, understand it, and improve it, we all leap forward together. Right now, Linux runs on more than 70% of all servers on Earth. It powers most of our internet. It's in our phones, our cars, our medical devices, and it's completely free. Han felt dizzy. Their species had spent centuries developing their own operating systems, each carefully protected by patents, each sold at premium prices. The idea that someone would create something so fundamental and just give it away was incomprehensible. This Linux, asked the academic, who receives the profits from its sale. Nobody, Doctor said. It's not sold, it's given away. Anyone can download it, use it, modify it, and even sell their own version if they want. The only requirement is that if you improve it, you share those improvements back with the community. That's madness, Merchant Lord said flatly. Innovation requires investment. Investment requires return. This system you describe defies the most basic economic principles. Doctor nodded. I understand it seems strange, but consider this. The Human Genome Project sequenced all of human DNA and released it publicly. No patents, no ownership. Because of that, medical researchers everywhere could study it, understand it, and develop treatments for genetic diseases. If one company had owned that data and charged for access, millions of people would have died waiting for expensive treatments. Instead, the information was free and innovation exploded. You are describing intellectual charity, said a geneticist, their voice dripping with disdain. The sold genetic modifications to their own children. The concept of free genetic data was apparently offensive to them. We call it collaboration, Doctor corrected gently. When you hoard knowledge, only a few benefit. When you share knowledge, everyone benefits. And when everyone benefits, the entire species advances faster. Ambassador K leaned forward. Doctor, I must ask directly, what is Earth's strategic goal with this approach? Are you attempting to undermine established economic systems? Are you trying to make other species dependent on human technology? No, Doctor said firmly. We're sharing because sharing works. It's not a strategy or a trick. It's just how many humans choose to work. We have corporations too. We have patents and profits and all of that. But we also have millions of people who contribute to projects simply because they want to solve problems and help others. They write code after work. They test software on weekends. They document features in their free time. They do it because it feels good to build something bigger than themselves. Han stared at the human. In 43 cycles of archiving innovation, they had never encountered anything like this. Every species competed. Every corporation hoarded advantages. Every individual sought profit. The idea that millions of beings would work together, without compensation, without ownership, without direct benefit, seemed to violate fundamental laws of nature. "The Council must deliberate," Han announced. "Doctor, thank you for your clarification. We will contact you with our decision." The human's image faded. The virtual chamber erupted in dozens of simultaneous conversations. Some species were intrigued. Others were suspicious. Many were openly hostile to the entire concept. Han sat in silence, staring at the human submission on their screen. Thousands of innovations, millions of contributors, all given freely to anyone who wanted them. The archivist had maintained the Cosmic Innovation Archive for decades, carefully preserving the galaxy's knowledge and ensuring proper attribution. But now, for the first time in their career, Han wondered if the archive itself might be based on the wrong assumptions. If humans could achieve so much by sharing freely, what did that say about everyone else who jealously guarded every scrap of knowledge? The question troubled Han deeply. And in the quiet of their archive chamber, surrounded by carefully attributed innovations, the archivist realized that humanity had just submitted something far more revolutionary than any of their individual technologies. They had submitted a completely different way of thinking about progress itself. Part 2. The Archive Council chamber had never been so chaotic. Han watched as representatives from over 200 species argued, shouted, and in some cases physically threatened each other through their holographic projections. 3 weeks had passed since Doctor's presentation, and the Council still could not reach a consensus about humanity's open-source submission. "This is clearly a form of intellectual warfare," insisted Ambassador K, slamming their clawed fist against their podium. "Humans flood the galaxy with free technology, undercutting legitimate businesses, destroying established markets. Once everyone depends on their systems, they will demand tribute or control." "I disagree," countered Professor of the Academic Guilds. "I have examined their historical records. Humans have practiced this open-source method for over 200 of their years, long before they knew other species existed. This is not a strategy aimed at us. This is simply how many of them operate." The corporate representative, a being named whose body was more machine than organic tissue, spoke with cold digital precision. "Regardless of intent, the effect is the same. The archive exists to preserve proper attribution and ownership. If we accept Earth's submission as valid, we create a precedent that undermines the entire economic foundation of galactic society. I move to reject the submission entirely." Han had been silent throughout most of these debates, but now they activated their speaking indicator. The chamber quieted slightly. "With respect," Han said, "we cannot reject the submission simply because it makes us uncomfortable. The innovations listed are real. They exist. They function. Billions of beings across multiple worlds already use human open-source technology. The encryption protecting this very archive session is based on human open-source algorithms. We cannot simply pretend it does not exist." "Then we modify the submission," suggested Merchant Lord. "We identify the original creators of each project and attribute the innovations to them individually. Created Linux. We credit him. Problem solved." "That would be inaccurate," said Doctor. The human had been invited to observe the deliberations, and now she stood to address the council. "Wrote the initial kernel, yes, but the Linux we use today contains contributions from over 28,000 individual developers. No single person can claim ownership. It belongs to the community that built it. Impossible, said a representative. Innovation springs from individual genius, not from crowds. Great works require singular vision, not committee design. You must be oversimplifying the human contribution model. Doctor pulled up a holographic display. Let me show you the history of a single open source project. This is Apache HTTP server, which runs about 30% of all websites in the known galaxy now. It was started by 8 developers in 1995. Over the following decades, 584 different people directly contributed code. Thousands more tested it, found bugs, suggested features, wrote documentation, and helped other users. The project has no CEO, no president, no single leader. Decisions are made by consensus among core contributors. Anyone can join, anyone can help, and it is absolutely free. The display showed a complex web of contributions, patches, updates, and improvements flowing from hundreds of different sources across decades. It looked less like a traditional organizational chart and more like a living organism, growing and evolving through collective effort. This is absurd, said. Without central authority, without profit motive, without ownership, such a project should collapse into chaos within cycles. Yet you claim it has functioned for over a century of Earth time. Not just functioned, Doctor replied. Thrived. Apache became the most popular web server in the world precisely because it was open source. When someone found a security flaw, they could fix it immediately and share the fix. When someone needed a new feature, they could add it themselves. The software improved faster than any proprietary alternative because thousands of people were working on it instead of a small team locked in some corporate lab. Han studied the display carefully. As an archivist, they understood documentation and organization. What Doctor was showing them was not chaos. It was actually quite elegant. A self-organizing system where contribution was voluntary but quality was maintained through peer review and community standards. The humans had effectively crowdsourced innovation. I propose a compromise, Han announced. The archive has maintained the same categorical system for individual innovations, corporate innovations, and governmental innovations. Let us create a fourth category, collaborative commons achievements. We accept Earth's submission as valid, but we clearly designate it as a different model of innovation. Other species can examine it, learn from it, or ignore it as they choose. The chamber fell silent. Various representatives consulted with their advisors, ran probability calculations, or simply contemplated the suggestion. I find this acceptable, Professor said finally. Academic inquiry demands we remain open to new models of knowledge creation. The Raptor clans can agree to this, Ambassador K said grudgingly, though we remain skeptical of human motives. One by one, species indicated their support. The several other corporate powers voted against, but they were outnumbered. After 3 weeks of debate, the motion passed with a 63% majority. Doctor bowed slightly. Thank you, Council. I hope that in time you'll see the benefits of collaborative development. We're happy to help any species that wants to learn more about open source methodology. Let us hope we do not regret this decision, said coldly before disconnecting from the session. As the council chamber emptied, Han remained at their station, updating the archive's categorical systems. They created the new designation and began properly filing Earth's submission under collaborative commons achievements. It was tedious work, but the archivist found it strangely satisfying. For the first time in their career, they were recording something genuinely new. 3 months passed. Han continued their normal duties, processing innovation submissions from various worlds and ensuring everything was properly documented. But they found themselves checking the human section of the archive more frequently than necessary. Something about the open source model fascinated them. Then, late one evening cycle, Han noticed unusual activity in the archive network logs. Someone was accessing the human submissions. A lot of someones. The access requests were coming from hundreds of different locations across the galaxy. The archivist pulled up the detailed logs and felt their breathing spiracles constrict. 93% of the access requests were coming from corporate networks. Han immediately flagged this for investigation and sent an alert to the Council Security Division. But before they received any response, the galactic news feeds exploded with breaking announcements. The corporatocracy, one of the largest and most powerful commercial entities in known space, was announcing a series of revolutionary new products, advanced medical that could repair cellular damage at the molecular level, quantum communication protocols that eliminated signal lag across vast distances, artificial intelligence governance systems that could manage planetary infrastructure with unprecedented efficiency. Han pulled up the technical specifications for each announcement and compared them to the human open-source submissions in the archive. Their three eyes widened in shock. The code was identical. They had downloaded human open-source projects, made superficial modifications, slapped their corporate branding on them, and filed galactic patents claiming full ownership. They were now selling these systems for enormous profits, with no mention of the human communities that had originally created them. "This is theft," Han whispered. They immediately composed an urgent message to Doctor detailing exactly what they had done. The reply came within hours. "Thanks for letting us know," Doctor wrote. "But that's actually allowed under most open-source licenses. They're permitted to take our code, modify it, and even sell it. We're disappointed they're not contributing improvements back to the community, but they're not technically breaking any rules. We hope they'll change their approach eventually." Han read the message 3 times, certain they must be misunderstanding something. The humans were not angry. They were not demanding legal action. They were not threatening trade sanctions or military response. The archivist pulled up humanity's historical records again, searching for context. They discovered something called the GNU Manifesto, written by a human named Richard Stallman in the primitive Earth year 1985. The document outlined a philosophy of software freedom that prioritized user rights over developer profits. "We want to replace secret software with free software," Stallman had written. "Once we have free software, everyone will be able to obtain good system software free, just like air." Just like air, the humans were treating innovation like atmosphere, something essential that should be available to everyone regardless of their ability to pay. Han sat back in their chair, processing this information. Every other species in the galaxy treated knowledge as currency. The humans treated it as a public good. And they did this not because they were forced to, not because they expected some strategic advantage, but because they genuinely believed it was the right approach. The archivist pulled up the network logs again. They were not the only ones downloading human open-source projects now. Engineers from dozens of species were accessing the archive's human section, examining the code, studying the methodologies. Some were probably planning to steal and rebrand human work, just like they had done. But others seemed to be genuinely trying to understand how collaborative development worked. On an academic world, a research collective had released their latest findings on quantum field theory under something they called Creative Commons Attribution. They cited humanity's open-source model as their inspiration. On a colony, a small group of geneticists had created a free medical database and invited public contributions. It was tiny compared to Earth's projects, but it existed. Seeds were being planted. Han realized that the Council's vote 3 months ago had not simply created a new category in the archive. It had opened a door. Humanity had shown the galaxy an alternative way of thinking about innovation, and some beings were starting to wonder if perhaps the old way was not the only way. The archivist began composing their quarterly report to the Council, but their manipulator claws hesitated over the input device. How did one properly document the beginning of a philosophical revolution? How did one archive the moment when an entire galaxy began to question its most fundamental assumptions about knowledge and progress? In the end, Han wrote simply, humanity's open-source methodology continues to generate interest across multiple species. Long-term implications remain unclear but potentially significant. It was the understatement of the millennium. Part 3. The announcement had been live for exactly 47 hours when Doctor called an emergency press conference that broadcast across every major communication network in the galaxy. Han watched from their archive station, curious about how humanity would respond to such blatant theft. Doctor stood at a simple podium with the Earth insignia behind her. Her expression was calm, almost amused. We're aware that corporatocracy has released several products based on human open-source projects. We want to address this directly. Here it comes, Han thought. The demands for compensation, the threats of legal action, the inevitable trade war. First, we want to congratulate the engineers who adapted our code, Doctor continued. Clearly, they have talented developers who understand how to integrate complex systems. Second, we want to remind everyone that this is exactly what open source means. They are legally allowed to use our code. That's the whole point. We're just disappointed they chose not to share their improvements with the community. The Galactic Press Corps erupted in confusion. Questions flew from dozens of species simultaneously. "Doctor," shouted a Raptor journalist, "they are selling your technology for billions of credits. Does Earth not demand compensation?" "No," Doctor said simply. "You cannot steal what is freely given. We released that code under open licenses specifically so anyone could use it. We meant anyone." "But they are claiming ownership through patents," insisted a reporter. "They are presenting your work as their innovation." "That's between them and their customers," Doctor replied. "We'll continue releasing new versions, better versions, with full documentation and community support. People who understand open source will know where the real innovation happens. People who don't understand it will buy the products, and that's their choice." A corporate spokesperson appeared on a split screen. "The corporatocracy has invested significant resources in adapting and improving these systems. We have added proprietary enhancements that justify our patents and pricing structure. Earth has no grounds for complaint." Doctor smiled slightly. "You are absolutely right. We have no complaint. But we do have a question. When you discover bugs or develop improvements, will you share those back with the open source community? That's how collaboration works. We freely gave you the foundation. Will you contribute to the future development?" The spokesperson's mechanical voice carried an edge of contempt. "The corporatocracy does not give away valuable intellectual property. That would be economically irrational." "Then good luck maintaining your code," Doctor said pleasantly. "Open source projects have thousands of contributors fixing problems, adding features, and adapting to new challenges. Your proprietary versions will be maintained by however many engineers you can afford to hire. In our experience, community development outpaces corporate development by orders of magnitude. But we'll see." The broadcast ended. Han sat in stunned silence. The humans had just refused to fight. In a galaxy where species went to war over patent disputes, where corporations destroyed competitors over stolen trade secrets, where individuals sued over minor infringements, humanity had simply shrugged and continued working. It was the most aggressive act of passive resistance the archivist had ever witnessed. Over the following weeks, Han watched the situation evolve in fascinating ways. Independent developers from dozens of species began examining both the original human open-source projects and the proprietary versions. They published detailed comparisons. The results were damning. The original human code was elegant, well-documented, and constantly improving as the community added features. The versions were the same code with minor cosmetic changes, aggressive licensing restrictions, and prices that put them out of reach for most individual users. Worse, when users discovered bugs in the products, they had to submit support tickets and wait for official patches. The open-source versions had bugs fixed within hours by community contributors. "Why would anyone buy the versions?" asked a young programmer in a popular Galactic forum. "The free versions are better, faster, and more reliable. This makes no sense." That single question seemed to resonate across the galaxy. Sales of products began to slow. Then they began to fall. Then they nearly stopped entirely except from corporations locked into existing contracts. Meanwhile, the human open-source community did something unexpected. They released a new version of their medical diagnostic AI with capabilities far beyond anything they had offered: treatment planning, genetic analysis, predictive modeling, all free, all documented, all available to anyone. A small group of doctors downloaded it, tested it, and were shocked by its effectiveness. They made modifications to adapt it for physiology and, inspired by the human model, released their modifications back to the community under the same open license. Researchers added compatibility for their species. Raptor physicians contributed predictive algorithms for their unique metabolism. Within 6 months, the open-source medical AI supported over 40 different species and was better than anything any single corporation could have developed. It was saving lives across hundreds of worlds, and it cost nothing. Hand documented all of this meticulously in the archive, watching the numbers with growing amazement. The rate of innovation submission from Earth was accelerating, but more significantly, other species were starting to submit projects to the new Collaborative Commons category. Small projects at first: educational tools, environmental monitoring systems, agricultural techniques, but they were growing. Then came the Archive Council's annual summit and the demanded emergency session. Holographic projection radiated barely contained fury. "The Council must expel humanity from the archive immediately," announced. "Their so-called open source is destroying the galactic economy. Established businesses cannot compete with free products. Markets are collapsing. This is economic warfare and it must be stopped." Ambassador K surprisingly disagreed. "The Raptor clans have examined this carefully. Humanity is not attacking anyone. They are simply offering an alternative. If businesses cannot compete with free, perhaps their business model requires updating." "Updating?" His voice rose sharply. "You cannot update the fundamental laws of economics. Goods and services require resources to produce. Those resources must be paid for. Profit is not optional. It is the foundation of civilization itself." "Is it?" Professor asked quietly. "I have spent the past month studying human history. They have maintained libraries of free books for centuries. They share medical knowledge that saves lives. They teach skills to strangers with no expectation of payment. Their most advanced technologies often come from academic institutions that freely publish research. The humans have proven that collaboration can be as powerful as competition, perhaps more powerful." Han activated their speaking indicator. "If I may add perspective as archivist, the innovation rate across the galaxy has increased by 47% since humanity's open-source model became widely known. More species are sharing research. More individuals are contributing to collaborative projects. The total knowledge in the archive has expanded more in 6 months than in the previous 6 years. These are not the signs of a collapsing system. These are the signs of an accelerating one." "Because parasites are stealing from legitimate creators," countered. "Doctor, your people have worked for decades on these projects. You invest time, resources, expertise, and you receive nothing in return. How is this sustainable?" Doctor's image appeared in the chamber. "We receive better technology. We receive a better galaxy. We receive the satisfaction of knowing our work helps others. Those returns are worth more than profit." Impossible, said flatly. No rational being believes that. Then perhaps humans are not rational by your definition, Doctor replied. We have a saying on Earth, a rising tide lifts all boats. When we share knowledge freely, when we work together to solve problems, everyone benefits, including us. The medical AI we created has been improved by 40 other species. It now saves human lives better than our original version could. We gained from sharing. Merchant Lord spoke up. But what of those who do not contribute? What of those who only take? Your work profited from it and gave nothing back. Does this not anger you? It disappoints us, Doctor admitted. We hoped they would understand the value of collaboration. But anger, no, because we didn't lose anything. We still have all our code. We still have our community. We still have our projects. They took a copy, not the original. And now their customers are discovering that copies without community support are worth less than the free originals. That's not our punishment of them. That's just how open source works. Han watched as various council members processed this. The concept seemed to slowly dawn on them. Humanity had created a system where taking without giving was not prevented, but simply made pointless. The value was not in the code itself, but in the living, evolving community around it. You could copy the code, but you could not copy the thousands of contributors constantly improving it. The vote came. Expel humanity from the archive, yes or no. It was not even close. Only the and a handful of other corporate powers voted yes. Everyone else voted no. Some voted enthusiastically, supporting the collaborative model. Others voted reluctantly, not ready to embrace it but unwilling to destroy it. Humanity remained in the archive. The collaborative commons category remained active, and the seeds of change continued to grow. 5 years later, Han reviewed the annual statistics and felt something like pride. 89 species now had active contributors to open-source projects. The collaborative commons category had become the most actively developed section of the archive. Innovation rates had tripled. Medical breakthroughs, environmental solutions, educational tools, and technological advances were being shared freely across hundreds of worlds. Corporate powers still existed, patents still had value, profit still drove much development, but now there was an alternative, now there was a choice. They had quietly restructured their business model, offering support and services for open-source software rather than selling lockdown proprietary versions. They claimed it was a strategic pivot. Everyone knew they had simply adapted to survive. Han pulled up a final report before ending their shift. A small park on Earth, captured by a documentary crew. Doctor sat on a bench with a young human child, both of them working on a portable computer. What if someone steals our code? The child asked. Doctor smiled. Then they'll learn something, and learning is the whole point. The child seemed to consider this, then typed something on the keyboard. A moment later, they hit a button, and their first contribution to an open-source project was uploaded to humanity's global network, ready to be downloaded by anyone, anywhere for free. Han closed the file and sat back in their archive station. They had spent their entire career documenting who owned what, who created what, who profited from what. They had believed, as all believed, that proper attribution and ownership were the foundations of progress. But the humans had taught the galaxy something different. Sometimes the greatest innovations were not owned by anyone. Sometimes progress came not from protecting knowledge but from sharing it. Sometimes the best way to advance was not to climb higher than others, but to lift everyone up together. The archivists began their daily backup of the collaborative commons section, preserving humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not just their technology, but their philosophy. The understanding that some things were too important to belong to anyone because they needed to belong to everyone. In a galaxy that had spent competing, humanity had offered collaboration. And slowly, impossibly, the galaxy was learning to accept it. Han closed their 3 eyes for a moment, feeling something they had not experienced in decades of archival work. Hope. Not for their own species, not for their own career, but for civilization itself. The humans had changed everything, and the galaxy, reluctantly but inevitably, was becoming better for it.